Will the Dallas Cowboys finally put a full game together and beat the Eagles on Christmas Eve? All that and more. This episode of the Locked On Cowboys podcast.
You are Locked On Cowboys, your
Locked
daily Dallas Cowboys podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast
Locked
Network, your
On.
team every day.
On.
Locked
On.
Cowboys.
Locked on Cowboys.
Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Thank you for tuning in. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. This podcast is sponsored by BetterHelp. It's not a crisis line. It's not self-help. It's professional therapy done securely online, available to people worldwide. They've got a special offer for our listeners right now. Get 10% off your first month at betterhelp.com/lockedon. I am Marcus Mosher. You can follow me on Twitter at Marcus_Mosher. He is Landon McCool. Check him out on Twitter at McCoolBCB. Landon, what's going on, sir?
I'm charged up, man. It's the Christmas Eve, and we've got a big present to open up early tomorrow morning, and I'm excited to talk about it. What?
I think it's Festivus, right?
That's right. It's Festivus today, and I forgot to put up my poll, but I certainly will be airing grievances about the Eagles. So we'll get into that part soon.
Yeah, so let's jump right into this game. No Jalen Hurts for the Eagles. It's not the first time the Cowboys have played the Eagles on or around Christmas, and they've had to play a backup quarterback. Do you remember a certain Jeff Garcia year in 2006?
Yeah, I mean, that's certainly there's not a game that I want to go back and remember very much. But yes, I do remember that game. Yeah.
All right, so big picture.
Yeah.
What does this game mean for Dallas without Jalen Hurts on the field?
Honestly, I mean, if we're going to be straightforward, this game in general just doesn't mean as much as it did a week ago, right? The Cowboys have all but kind of sealed up their spot in the playoffs or where they're going to be. Obviously, there's some adjustment that can be made. If they win, there is still an outside possibility that they could win the NFC East if the Eagles falter the rest of the way. They could still win the first seed, which is a part of that, that equation. But in reality, I think it's just a very different game than we would have anticipated.
Just looking at it 2 weeks ago, right?
Yeah, the stakes aren't as high. The level of difficulty isn't as high. It's really kind of odd, right? Like, this is still a Cowboys-Eagle game. Still two of the best teams in the NFC playing each other. Still a primetime game on Christmas Eve. Like, all those things are still in place, but a lot of the stakes that were kind of inherent to it have oddly enough been evened out in a way that you just don't really expect in kind of late December against two division rivals that are at the top of their conference.
Doesn't mean it's not an important game for the Cowboys, though. Like,
no, absolutely not.
This is still the number one team in the league right now on record. They beat you before, and the Cowboys just haven't played that well over the last month. Like, the last game they played really well was the Minnesota game. They need to play well in this game. After losing last week, you need to put together a really good game plan on both sides of the ball. I don't know. Obviously, you need to win, but I just want to see this team play better and play more crisp football on both sides of the ball.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that's really the key thing, is that this is just one of the last tests that you're going to have against a really, really good team. So you just want to see this team play at a level that gives you some sort of kind of confidence that they could go into the playoffs and make a run. And I think that's really what we're looking for. And hopefully that's what we see on Saturday.
Yeah. All right. Let's talk about the offense in this game. Cowboys are going to have Tyron Smith back at right tackle. The offense is basically good to go. No injury concerns on that side of the ball. How do they score 28, 30 points against this Eagles defense that's really loaded up front?
Run the football. This is as good as this defense is at rushing the passer. I mean, they're as good as the Cowboys, if not better. As good as they are in coverage at points, they are giving up more per carry than the Cowboys are on a base down by down basis as a run defense. So you, as a team that runs the football very well, need to take advantage of that and need to run all over this defense, if only to kind of keep the pass rushers at bay a little bit. And start to involve the defensive backs into the run game, make them have to get physical, just to kind of open things up in the back end of the pass game as well. I think this running the football will help you in two ways. One, it's probably a stable way that you're able to move the ball against what is a very good defense. And two, it's going to limit opportunities even further for this offense to be on the field. And when you have a backup quarterback who we'll talk about the changes that this Eagles offense is likely to make with Gardner Minshew versus Jalen Hurts. But when you have a backup quarterback who's being given less and less opportunities on the field because your defense or your run game is able to kind of control the clock, you can have desperation set in, especially with the backup quarterback, like I mentioned. That's when you start having kind of positive things happen on that side of the ball. I think running the football is a very clear way to, I mean, obviously the Cowboys offense wants to do that naturally anyways, but I also think it's a very natural way to attack this Eagles defense in order to kind of open things up for everything else.
Even with Jordan Davis.
Oh yeah.
The Eagles pride themselves in being like the big bad bully of the NFC, right? Like they have some guys that are massive. They call themselves like they're a tough physical team. Sometimes you just got to go
right at him.
Go beat up the bully, right?
Yeah.
Like show them that you're not afraid to go be physical. And if you want to run the ball 40 times right to the right side of that offensive line, behind Tyron Smith and behind Zach Martin, go do it. Because I don't think Hassan Reddick, who is undersized, is going to want to stop the run. And some of their other pass rushers, like, I think that you don't have to turn this into like the Denver Bronco, Tim Tebow team, but run the ball and run it successfully. And I think the Cowboys will be fine.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that they will be able to move the ball in this Eagles defense if they're able to kind of maintain a balanced attack. Because I mean, if
short
you
passes
don't want
like Dalton Schultz, CeeDee Lamb on some drag routes, like that's the way you're going to beat this team, not probably throwing the ball down the field.
It's kind of crazy how much these two teams really mirror each other in a lot of ways, right? Yep. I mean, I think the offense runs differently on either side, but I think as far as like strengths, weaknesses, depth, a lot of these things, these teams are very, very similar. So in a lot of the ways that you would attack the Eagles are some of the ways that you would probably want to try to attack the Cowboys as well.
I'm actually not too worried about their offense. Like I think the Cowboys are going to be fine on offense. They'll find a way to score somewhere between 24 and 30 points. There might be a quarter or so where they struggle and it's tough sledding, but listen, we've got this long list of data that shows that Dak is really good against the NFC East. And he's really good with Kellen Moore at putting up points. Some games are sloppier than others, but they're going to find out. I've got more questions about the defense, and especially against Gardner Minshew, who is a little bit of a wild card. Let's talk about the defense, Landon. But before we do that, I'll let you know that this podcast is brought to you by Turo. Turo is the world's largest car sharing marketplace. With Turo, you can book any car that you want, wherever you want it, from a community of local hosts. Browse a huge selection of vehicles for just about any occasion or budget across the US, UK, Canada, and Australia. Book a spacious SUV or minivan for a family road trip. Get a classic or luxury car for a special event, birthday, or holiday. Or test drive that new electric vehicle that you've had your eye on for a while to see how it fits in your everyday life. Many of the Turo hosts can even deliver the car right to you. Every trip is backed by liability insurance. Terms, conditions, and exclusions apply. Forget boring rental cars and find your drive at Turo.com. We also have a public service announcement from NHTSA. Did you know that driving high is considered driving under the influence? That's right. Driving under the influence of marijuana is against the law in every state, even in states where marijuana is legal. That means driving high could get you a DUI. And if you think law enforcement officers can't tell when you're driving high, you're wrong, because your friends can tell, coworkers can tell, even your parents, everyone can tell. So what makes you think that a law enforcement officer doesn't know when you're driving high? Driving under the influence of marijuana can slow your response time down and change how you perceive time and speed. So even if you think you're fine to drive when you're high, you're not, because the bottom line is if you feel different, you drive different. Remember, drive high, get a DUI, paid for by NHTSA. All right, let's talk about the defense. How much does Gardner Minshew playing in this game instead of Jalen Hurts kind of change the equation here?
I think it changes it quite a bit. I mean, I could be wrong, but I just think that, they can kind of run the same offense if they want. It's just not going to be the same level of effectiveness with Gardner Minshew running it with Jalen Hurts. Now, Does that mean that Gardner Minshew won't pull one and run for one big long gain? Absolutely not. He has a level of athleticism there. I just think that the threat of having Jalen Hurts there in that kind of offense is so much greater. And I think that this is kind of one of the issues with running this kind of offense without having a backup who is an equally capable runner, is that now they have to kind of shift their offense. Now, it's not too much. It's not, terrible, and it certainly isn't something that's going to be a huge detriment to them. They have so much talent, elsewhere. But I think it does change the shape a little bit of how this offense wants to run. And I think it makes it a little bit easier for the Cowboys to defend. That isn't a slight against Gardner Minshew, who I think is honestly probably one of the better backups in the league.
Without a doubt.
But I think that it is like, kind of putting more onus on the quarterback to produce than, kind of what you were able to scheme things up with Jalen Hurts' athleticism.
And I also think Minshew is just one of these high variance quarterbacks. Like, there are some games when he's protected and he's confident, he can be really good. Like, he had a game last year with the Eagles. I think it was against the Jets, where he just lit them up. And then he played Dallas later in the year when the Cowboys, when they benched a lot of their starters, and he looked terrible. But what he's going to do is he's going to throw the ball down the field. He's going to take chances. He's going to try to fit it into windows that maybe he shouldn't try to fit it in. It's a good backup, but Cowboys should have a big advantage here. Where I'm concerned, Landon, is the running game, because what I think Philly's just going to pivot to, like Dallas, is they're just going to run the football, and they're going to dare Dallas to devote a ton of resources to stopping the run game.
Yeah, and I think that's going to be what's going to be happening on both sides of the ball. I think both teams are going to have a serious commitment to the run, and then it's going to be about who can take advantage of that commitment, and play action over the top and get passes down the field.
One-on-one shots, right? That's what they want. They want Dallas to put that extra guy in the box, and then, hey, here's A.J. Brown against Kelvin Joseph one-on-one down the field.
Yep, and the seesaw of bringing a safety down to stop the run, putting the safety back to stop the wide receivers. I mean, that's something that's going to be happening on for both defenses throughout the game. So I think the Cowboys, have to find a way. Look, I think the Cowboys actually have a little bit of an advantage in this, simply because in that specific area, simply because they're not being asked to change any part of their run game in order to kind of go in here. Not that it's a huge play, not change, and not that it's like Philly doesn't have, kind of regular run schemes that they can't run without a running quarterback. They absolutely can, and they're very, very good.
Yes.
I just think that it does take a chunk of their playbook out. And for the Cowboys, they go in with their full menu because they have their starting quarterback.
It's still going to be difficult to stop this offense. They're going to have wrinkles. Nick Sirianni wants to win this game on Christmas Eve. It's a nationally televised game. They're the only game that's on for the Fox channel. They're going to have some wrinkles. They're going to do some weird things just to see if they can catch the Cowboys off balance. It's obviously going to be an easier offense to stop, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be a bad offense either.
Yeah, the misdirection. I mean, they saw this from Jacksonville last week. So they'll definitely be trying that. Some reverses.
You'll see Quez Watkins get a touch. You'll see A.J. Brown get a sweep or whatever.
The other
aspect, do some wild things.
The other aspect we need to remember too here is that Dallas Goddard is back in this game, and he's going to have an effect as well, just to be kind of a safety, at the very least, a very strong safety blanket for Gardner Minshew in case things kind of break down in front of him. So that's another element that they've added back into their offense that they haven't had for the last few weeks. So it's interesting, right? Like, it's kind of it's not as straightforward an evaluation of the Eagles as you would think.
No.
It's going to be interesting to see exactly what they kind of run out there on Saturday.
And I'm curious to see what the defensive line looks like, because Micah Parsons dealing with an illness. I wonder how, not healthy, but how good he's going to feel going into this game. We should mention Sam Williams, who got in a car accident on Wednesday night. Seems like no serious injuries, but his availability for this game is in question. Dorrance Armstrong is dealing with a knee injury as well as a foot injury. Demarcus Lawrence is dealing with multiple injuries. No Jonathan Hankins. Like, Cowboys are beat up on the defensive line. That's usually not a great thing when you're going up against the NFL's best offensive line.
Yeah, but at the same time, Demarcus Lawrence is angry, and I like angry Demarcus Lawrence. He did not play well last week, and he's one of the few players in the entire NFL who plays well against Lane Johnson.
It's wild.
So Lane must see Demarcus Lawrence in his nightmares at this point. So yeah, I do think that there is certainly a lot of kind of physical toll that has happened along the defensive line. I would also say that they have got to be pretty pissed off after the way they played last week. So I like that the chip on the shoulder going into a very difficult game against one, if not the best offensive line in football.
Then on top of that, Lana, there's a good chance that this is their last home game all year, right? They play the final 2 games on the road. They're the 5 seed, very likely to play on the road throughout the playoffs. I would think there would be some pride here for the Cowboys playing on Christmas Eve, being a nationally televised game, and this being their last home game, that they're going to want to give the fans a good show. So I would expect the defense to play significantly better than what we saw last week. Let's make some predictions for this game. But before we do that, I want to let you know that this episode is brought to you by Bet Online. BetOnline.net is your #1 source for sports betting info, stats, news, and analysis. Get the latest odds and trends for every professional and amateur league out there, from pro football to college bowl season to basketball, the World Cup. They've got it all at BetOnline.net. And if you love sports podcasts, and we know that you do because you're listening to one right now, you can even find those at BetOnline as well. It's the fastest and the easiest way to get your betting info. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more. Bet Online, where the game starts. Last time I checked at Bet Online, the Cowboys were 5-point favorites going into this Christmas Eve game. What's your prediction for this one?
Well, real quick, before we get into predictions, I'd like to ask you a hypothetical real quick.
Sure.
Which offense do you think is scarier going into the game, at the point that we were playing them, right? So Jacksonville last week with Trevor Lawrence, or the Eagles this week with Gardner Minshew?
Oh, it's Lawrence, because it's just a quarterback that can move and throw the ball down the field accurately.
The numbers that he's been putting up the last 7 games has been absolutely outrageous. Mm-hmm. So I tend to agree. I think that despite the boogeyman that we've all been told that the Eagles are, and they certainly are when they're fully healthy, like this is a very, very, very difficult offense to stop. I think it takes it down several notches with Gardner Minshew, even though he's a very, very good backup quarterback.
And Philadelphia has the #1 offensive line in the league, and Dallas played an offensive line last week that had multiple injuries. It just goes to show you the value of having a truly elite quarterback playing at an elite level.
So my general take is that I think this is going to be a high-scoring game. Because maybe more high scoring than I would have earlier anticipated, because I do think that both of these teams are going to try to run the football and probably have some success. And then eventually that will lead to success in the passing game as well. Mm-hmm. I think I'm picking the Cowboys to win 31-28. Okay. I think that, like I said, I think this is going to be a run game for the first half. Maybe not quite the entire first half, but I think that there's going to be a ton of kind of establishing the run, because that's where both of these teams feel like they can move the ball the best against these defenses. And then once things open up, you'll start to see kind of the real chess game of finding the mark on defense and exploiting them, and then finding a way to move the ball down the field. I keep going back and forth on how this game is going to go. But I do think that ultimately what will happen is that Minshew will give up the ball probably at an inopportune time, and that'll give the Cowboys the kind of extra possession they need to win this game. So I have them winning a squeaker, not quite covering, but still, with a field goal win.
I think this game's going to start out slow, to be honest. I think Dak has a tendency to, especially in games like this at home, to kind of start out slow and be a little bit anxious, and tends to be a little high with some of his passes. And Minshew is going to be the same way. Like, he's going to be so jazzed to play in front of primetime. Wouldn't be surprised if he looks a little erratic to start and kind of starts to slow down. So I kind of see this as like a 13-7 game at halftime that all of a sudden finishes at 27-24. Something like that. But so tough. I'll pick Dallas here. I think Dallas.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, I know. I just feel like Dallas, they don't need this game more than Philadelphia does because, frankly, they can't really move too much
They
up
can't
and
do
down.
much.
But
Yeah.
I get a feeling that they're going to really want to put behind what they did the last 2 weeks and show out for a primetime crowd. That's all.
Yeah, I mean, I think if anything, you could fault this team for maybe looking too far ahead those last 2 weeks to this game. So there's no excuse for being focused on this game and getting out start. So we'll see
I
how it
wouldn't be
plays out.
surprised at all if they look really good in this game and then they come out completely flat against the Titans next Thursday.
Maybe.
You know, you go on the road after winning a big game, you have Christmas with your family, and then all of a sudden,
4 days later.
4 days later, you're playing one of the most physical teams in football,
Yeah.
and poof,
On the road.
on the
Yeah.
road, probably
Outside.
bad weather. Nashville's got a ton
Yep.
of snow right now.
Yep.
Wouldn't be surprised at all.
No.
All right. That is it for today's show. Thank you guys for tuning in on this the day before Christmas Eve. We want to thank you for making Locked On Cowboys your first listen today. Now make your second listen to Locked On Sports Today podcast. Peter Bukowski brings you the biggest stories from around the sports world in 20 minutes. I'm actually on that show on Friday, so go check it out. Get the analysis and the opinions before anyone else with our local and national experts and insiders. Locked On Sports Today podcast, available on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. All the same places that you download the Locked On Cowboys podcast. Go check us out on YouTube. You can follow Landon at McCoolBCB. I'm at Marcus_Mosher. Enjoy the game. Enjoy your Christmas. Landon, you and I will be back late Christmas night to break it all down. I think that's the plan.
That's the plan for now. So everyone enjoy your Christmas. Happy holidays to all of y'all.
See you guys next time.